What's up, Warriors? In this video, we're going to talk about another way to identify what is a common challenge among Warriors doing hypothesis testing, which is identifying the null and alternative hypotheses. That's right. One more way of looking at this. It's different than other ways we've done it, and it may help some of y'all. So let's get down to it. So, the bottom line is we need to think about, in a situation, who our protagonist might be. Okay? Meaning that in a situation, we might have ourselves, this might be us, or it might be someone else who has an idea about what is going on. Okay? So this could be an idea that we have, or let's just talk about a situation in which we've got a friend of mine. That's right, the Dark Knight himself, Batman. Okay, and Batman has a belief about crime in Gotham City dealing with, let's just say, drugs. And he thinks that the amount of drug crimes per week has gone up in the past 2 months from what it used to be. And drug crimes per week, major drug-related crimes per week, was an average of 3.5, and he thinks this has gone up, and so we'll call this the population mean. Okay? So, we have two kind of situations in which we could further frame this problem. Okay? One is in which there's no real statement about the status quo that we can find in the narrative. Okay? And if that is the case, there's no opposing statement to this belief, and really there's no statement at all. We just have Batman's belief about what is happening, or our protagonist's belief, or our own belief about what is happening. So in that situation, it might be helpful if the first thing we do is identify the alternative hypothesis. Now, it seems kind of backwards, but it might work out. So in this case, our alternative hypothesis would be that the population mean is indeed greater than 3.5 drug-related crimes per week. And once we have that, we know by our knowledge of what the null should be in relationship to the alternative, and we can load that thing secondly. You got to say it to do it. We can load that second. Wow, that was really hard. And so we know that 3.5 has to stay there. We know that we're still dealing with the population mean, and we know that this is the null hypothesis. And because this is that way, we have to turn it around, and we will always have an equal sign of some sort within the null hypothesis. So bam. All right, if Batman believes this and there's no statement opposing him or any statement at all agreeing with him, he wants to essentially he wants to reject or fail to reject the opposite of his belief so that he doesn't have confirmation bias. Okay, so this is a way to get our null and alternative set. Another way, depending on the situation, is if we do have a statement about the status quo. Okay, so let's run with this a little bit. Let's say that, I don't know about Commissioner Gordon, because Commissioner Gordon is usually in alignment with Batman. But let's say that Commissioner Gordon's out of town, or he's on sabbatical or something else, and we have some other stand-in commissioner. Maybe he was even corrupt. Surprise, surprise, in Gotham City. I know we never would have guessed it. But So we have Commissioner X, and Batman goes to Commissioner X and he says, so what do you think about how crime has happened? What drug-related crime in Gotham City? Okay. Now, let's make this advanced, all right? And let's say that the stand-in commissioner says, well, I think that since I have taken charge, that drug-related crime has actually gone down. Prior to my tenure, it was 2.6 crimes per week. And I think it's actually gotten less since I've been in charge. Okay. Well, regardless, in this situation, we probably want to do the opposite of what we did up here. We want to load that null hypothesis first. We're still dealing with a population mean. And in this case, because Commissioner X says 2.6 or less, we're going to do this, and we're going to put that equal sign. Now, if that is that, then our alternative, we're going to load second. And we're going to take this number, pull it down, 2.6. And of course, if this is this in the null, we're going to flip that around like Missy Elliott and put this here. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, wait a minute. This isn't Batman's belief. His bat belief, yes, there is such a thing, is that they've gone up from 3.5. Well, remember that in this kind of situation where we have a status quo, we have to first reject or fail to reject the status quo. And so because of that, we have to deal with the number, the parameter that is associated with that status quo. And we have to address that first in the form of rejecting that or failing to rejecting that through the hypothesis test before we can begin to do anything with this 3.5. Okay? If we were to reject this null hypothesis, then that would give us grounds to pursue this. We may not even actually have to, quote, prove 3.5. We have sufficient evidence to say that it actually has increased. In this case, Batman would have enough to dispute Commissioner X's claim, show that actually crime rate has gone up, all right? And then maybe Batman could do other things to further pursue this right here. He gets more data. Maybe he gets Commissioner X moved out of the job, gets Commissioner Gordon back. Maybe he gets some more resources and so on and so forth. Now that's kind of a different venture. But before he can even begin to gain traction and momentum in that direction, he first has to reject this null hypothesis over here. Okay? So, just a short video. Another way to quickly recap, we first want to either, if this is us, identify that it's us, identify our belief, or if we have a protagonist in a narrative or a question on an exam or something else that we're dealing with, maybe in real life, we identify the protagonist and their belief, and then further frame the situation based on whether we, quote, have a status quo or not. If we don't have a status quo, then we might just be able to load that alternative hypothesis in first and then frame the null based off of that alternative, simply putting the opposite in. However, we may have a status quo, and in that case, we need to address the claim about that status quo first and then craft the alternative accordingly, knowing that our personal belief we kind of have to set aside for the moment if we even want to do anything with it. So with that, give that a shot. If you've been having problems framing and developing null and alternative hypotheses and see how that works for you. And most importantly, warrior on.